she's a wonderful example of whatever you have it only partially to take care of yourself. You have it to share. You have it to make a difference for others. And that's what she would always say.
She just wanted to make Yakima a better place. She wasn't somebody who, for example, had a passion for history or a passion for this. Really, her passion was toward making kind of people's dreams come true in Yakima. She wanted to help things that would make Yakima a better place. I mean, there was a whole group of us who were very kind of her little family, so to speak. And we all spoke at her, well, not all of us, but in fact, they had to hold the funeral because I was in Argentina when she died. She had gone on trips with us. She didn't happen to go on that one, fortunately. But so they held the funeral until I got back because I was in the will, in her request to be part of the funeral. So but her, some other ones were her, who unfortunately is no longer with us either, is Chuck Bohosky. He was her stockbroker, actually, but he was also more like her de facto son because she didn't have children, and he was very, very close to her, and she would, in fact, it was hard for him to go out of town because she'd get nervous. All right. My name is John Ball, and I was hired here as the director of the museum in April of 1992. I stayed director of the Yakima Valley Museum until December 2016, and since that time my official title is Director Emeritus Archivist, but mainly what I do is I handle the library and archives, people's requests for information, and I've been working ever since I retired really to try to put the archives in some kind of order, because I was fortunate to come at a time when a lot of the families who had founded the museum and also given things were still living, and I have a mind that remembered things, and I'm trying to get all that stuff out of my head into the databases, because how the relationships and why these businesses are related to these people and that kind of thing. Her father was a doctor and in Eugene, Oregon, and she grew up there, and she married actually her childhood college sweetheart. Then they moved to Washington, D.C., but that was during World War II, and he died. He was killed during World War II. So she came back and then went to nurses training and met Don Jewett, and then they married, and they came up here to Yakima because he took over the management of the Farmers Insurance office here. And so most people really thought of them just as they owned an insurance agency. But what was really true was that Don's father was the 8th employee ever hired by Farmers Insurance back in the 1920s. And in the late 1980s, Farmers Insurance Group was converted in terms of business management So all the stock and all the, assets or whatnot, the shares that he owned in the company had to be cashed out. And so suddenly they were comfortable already. I mean, had done very well in insurance and whatnot, but suddenly they had a lot of money. And the kind of apocryphal story is that Don was sitting at the country club one day and opening his mail, and there was another check for like $7 million or something. And he said, what am I ever going to do with this money? And so they decided that they would give it away. She traveled with me, went on a number of trips with me, and her sister, after Don died, her sister and her husband came to live here also. And so then, and her sister did have children, but they were not here. The daughter lived in Seattle and the son lived in Minneapolis. And so Ernie and Betty, which was Helen's sister, and I and Helen often did a lot of things together. We just had a good time, and we developed a kind of relationship where she felt comfortable if I would say something that we wanted to do at the museum, and she'd say she'd be interested in it, would help, great. If she didn't, she would be, no, that's not what I want to do. And it kind of got to also with other things that would come up. She would say, well, I'm not sure about this. And I would be kind of a sounding board. I really, didn't want to advise her. And Chuck, who was her financial advisor, also said the same thing. She would make her own mind. She had her own mind, and we were more listening. We'd get out of the way. One of the things that I really admired about her is that she didn't really have a family in the sense that a lot of people would have, a lot of children, grandchildren, anything like that. But she kind of made the community her family, and the community also kind of embraced her. I mean, partly because, of course, she gave the money and whatnot, but it's also, she just enjoyed being there, and you enjoyed having her there, and you knew she was supportive of doing things. And so the last years of her life where, she was getting frailer and not as energetic as she could be, because she was well into her 90s when she passed away, she had a group around her who would help her and do things and be whatever they needed at that time. She didn't like being 90. She didn't like growing old. There was a party for her on the stage of the Capitol Theater. And one of the things we did was we made a big cake. And then myself, Brooke Cresswell, Chuck Bohosky, and whatnot, we all came out of the cake. Dressed, I might add. We didn't want to shock this poor lady to death. So she was generous. She kind of knew what she wanted to do. As a result, she made the community a better place, and we have things that the community would not have had. One of the other longtime philanthropists in town was, of course, the Robertson family, who owned the newspaper. And I remember Bill saying one time, Helen, she's one of the good ones, because she shared her assets and shared her resources. And she wasn't the only one, of course, but she was interested in a wide variety of sights and sounds and whatnot. She loved to go first class. She'd always be first class whenever she did. And so she wanted her projects to be first class too. And I think one of the other things that was kind of nice is that, all of us, all the people who did, for which she supported, this lobby for one, she gave a major gift to build it, but of course it ended up costing more. And, you always have this fear, you go back and say, well, it's going to cost more. And that was fine. She just wanted it to be what she wanted it to be. And if it costs more money, it costs more money. She was not concerned about those kinds of things. One of the other things that's kind of a little funny story is she always had the regular kind of checks that all personal people have, the small, kind of wallet-sized checks. And every time she would give something to us, she never gave it in stock. She always liked to either sell the stock or whatnot and then give us the cash. I mean, she would do it. She would make those transactions. And then she'd write the check. And she'd always complain because there wasn't enough room for all the zeros. first philanthropies really were to their church and to the Arboretum. They gave the organ to Wesley United Methodist Church. That was one of their first big charities. And then they became very involved with the Arboretum. And when I came, that was just being constructed, the Jewett Interpretive Center. I think she's still around, and that's Rita Pilgrim, who was the director there at that time, and she would be the one. But what kind of happened is after Don died, then I and a number of the other people who are kind of close around her kind of became her, sounds kind of weird and I don't really mean it this way, but we would always be with her kind of, because she was a really quiet lady, and she wasn't very social in the sense of she didn't have a lot of, they had always done everything together, she and Don, and they had traveled together and they played golf together, and they actually went bird hunting together. They loved to go bird hunting. And but after he died, then she was kind of alone, and then Chuck and I had become friends, and I became friends with Helen right away. She had come over here to, one of the parishioners at Wesley United Methodist Church was also a supporter of the museum and was on the museum board, and he introduced me to her and to Don. Probably I'd only been here 2 or 3 months, and we had lunch, and then it just kind of went from there. And so I would accompany her to a lot of events and whatnot, because, as time went on, she became, supportive of Memorial Hospital, and they would have galas. She became supportive of the Capitol Theater. They had galas. She did things here. Her first big gift to the museum actually was the soda fountain. In 1995, we had the opportunity to purchase the old Jordan drugstore soda fountain. And I happened to run into her, and I said, we have this soda fountain. And I was thinking at the time, we just use it as an exhibit, to be part of the exhibits. And I said, and she said something about, oh, that would be great fun to go on. Are you going to serve ice cream? And I said, well, no, we were thinking of making an exhibit. And I could kind of tell that she was interested in it. So I said, well, maybe we should. And so she said, yeah, I'll pay for that. And so it ended up being quite substantial, about $500,000 to build the soda fountain, which is downstairs now. And she had great fun with that because we helped her. She came and helped us pick the ice cream that we were going to use, and she was at the gala when we opened it, and she would always come there and called it her soda fountain. So she did the Child Development Center down at the Y. Somebody else you could talk to who was involved in that at the time was Mal Arnett. He was the director at that time, and he's still in town. And of course the hospital, the Capitol, just a variety of things. Her main charities really were the symphony. When she passed away, she left $1 million to each of her 7 favorite charities. And that was the hospital, Heritage University, the museum, the symphony, WSU, because Don had gone there. She just wanted to make Yakima a better place. She wasn't somebody who, for example, had a passion for history or a passion for this. She did have some of a passion for healthcare because she had been a nurse briefly. But other than that, really her passion was toward making kind of people's dreams come true in Yakima. So she wanted to help things that would make Yakima a better place. I think she did the Greenway, whole variety. I mean, you could see the list of them, and I certainly can't begin to remember them all. But and she would be very passionate about those things, because she didn't really give out of the need to, like, for example, to lower her taxes. I know I made the mistake one time of, we were looking at something for one of the projects here, and I said, well, when do you want to do this? Do you want to be in this tax year, for that tax year? And she was very adamant about, taxes are not why I'm giving this money. So, okay, we'll back off on that subject. You also have great private philanthropy here that has stepped in and done a lot of those things that have made these things happen. This museum, for example, you'd never have a museum this large, or a symphony as well as it is in a town like this, without public funding. I mean, neither place gets public funding, yet they're both very high-end quality institutions or quality organizations. And other towns, the public sector would come in a heavier way, but maybe the private sector wouldn't have. So it's just kind of a balance in that way.
As we began, it was very evident that we needed financial support to get started. And I don't know if you know the history very well, but you would, in 1859, there's no railroad across the United States. If you want to come from Montreal or French Canada or New York to Oregon, you got to take a ship all the way down to Panama, and there was no Panama Canal. So you had to ride the burros across the canal and get on another ship and then go on up to Portland. So that's how our Order of Sisters got there. And, we've been, since 1859, we've been involved in education at various places, including helping to get Heritage started. I'm Sister Kathleen Ross. I am the founding president of Heritage University. I served in that role from 1982 when we opened until 2010, and I retired. And I retired from full-time work, but I began doing research with the students on ways that faculty could be really responsive and helpful to students who came from families where no one has been to college before. So low income usually, but especially the first generation to college students. Because at the beginning, everybody said, you can't start a college out in the middle of the hop fields and the middle of the Yakima Indian Reservation. That's not going to work. Well, here we are. And I do remember that when I first met Helen Jewett, I enjoyed talking with her, but when I told her what we were doing, she said, "Oh, honey, I don't know if that's, I don't like to put my money into something that I'm not sure it's going to work. So keep in touch, but I don't think I want to contribute at the beginning." So she didn't, but I did keep in touch. Such a lovely person and supporting many wonderful things in our community. But later when I did tell her, okay, things have progressed. We have a wonderful campus, buildings, and we're going to build a new building, an Arts and Sciences Center, and these are the kinds of things that are going to be in it. Well, her nursing background really came to the fore of her thoughts. First of all, science was really important. So knowing that we were going to be building some good science labs. At that time, our science labs were in portables. I think some good science was taught, but that's because the professors were very creative. So having some good science labs was very important. So she was very enthusiastic about that. And then when I talked about some of the other programs and talked about nursing, oh, are you going to have a lab where they can practice their nursing skills? Yes, we are. I know she contributed $1 million first to get the building and that lab and the models and all the equipment in there. But also I think she contributed another $500,000 later for some of the additions or some of the rest of the building. And I think looking back at the total of all of the gifts that she gave over the years, more than $2 million. So she was a big factor in getting Heritage's science program and especially the nursing program up to where it really needed to go as it was starting. We didn't have nursing at the beginning. We wanted to, but we weren't able to we didn't have the equipment and so forth. So the nursing program was added about 20 years into the history of Heritage University. And with the building of this building, it was really raised to another level with the equipment. And so we were thrilled that Helen was just a part of it. And actually, earlier, she had also contributed to renovating the original elementary school building that Heritage started in. It was called McKinley Elementary School, built in 1926. When we acquired it, we renovated it substantially, and now Helen Jewett is honored in the Jewett Nursing Lab, so we were able to honor her adequately. Yeah. You know, she had a reasonably nice house that I went and visited her at a number of times, you know, had a lunch there or whatever. But it wasn't a big fancy house. And given the amount of money that she had from her husband and, you know, her family background, she could have had a much more elaborate home. And she always talked about the most important thing to her was how she could help others. And she wanted to use her money to do that. So in many different places around town, you can see the effect. I mean, the one I see often because I love to go there to walk is the Arboretum and the Jewett Center there, with all of the different unique qualities of it that make it a very special place. That and it's free. Everyone can go to the Arboretum anytime they want. I see homeless people sitting and having a little snack or walking around and being a part of it. And Helen would be so happy that we continue to use her spirit of giving and many other things in town that she has contributed to. So she's a wonderful example of whatever you have it only partially to take care of yourself. You have it to share. You have it to make a difference for others. And that's what she would always say.
Is there a lesson that you think we can take from her and her life?
I think probably the lesson, I spoke of it to a certain degree already, but she gave, and she gave, you know, obviously she had resources and she shared those resources. And a result, she developed a family that she would not have had without that, and embraced that family and was generous to us. I mean, she was generous of her time, generous of herself. And I think, I mean, I don't have those kinds of resources, but I have kind of learned that I just give my time then, because I don't have family either. And so as a result, you know, I figure, well, that's how I'm going to develop a family. So, I mean, she could have just stayed there, and there are other people who shall remain nameless in town who became kind of bitter as they got older. Well, nobody pays any attention to me and that kind of thing. And a lot of it, and they could have done the same thing. I mean, it didn't have to be money. I mean, in her case, it was money, but it was also her personality. And there were some other people in town who did not have money that people really, really enjoyed being around and whatnot, because they were willing to help. And they helped in the way they could help, which wasn't always financial, but it was time, or it was their artistic talents, or something other thing. So they were also, so I think giving, you get a lot back, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I mean, it makes a difference. You feel like you can help out, and you know, and everybody needs some kind of help. I mean, you know, we've gotten to the point, I think, in our society, there's so many needs and because there have always been so many needs, and you can't do it all, and you have to realize that you can't do it all. I mean, she would even say there's just things that that's not a passion for me or not something that I want to get involved in. But she adopted things and she gave and enjoyed doing it.